well. So check that out if you're watching Comeback Sports. Folks, we're going to kick things off with topic number one. And on topic number one, we've been talking about F1 all year long, obviously, and biggest story in F1 came down to this past weekend, and it's manufactured by Masi, Michael Masi, the head of F1 officiating, came down with this crazy ruling at the end of this race, which was huge because, it was Hamilton and Verstappen. They were fighting for the top spot for the championship over the weekend in Abu Dhabi. And then this crazy ruling happens where Verstappen takes advantage, ends up winning the race, and then ends up winning the championship under these crazy conditions. Brandon, you're going to explain this better than I can, but everybody is frustrated with what happened on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing right now is that the integrity of the sport is at stake and at risk here with what happened and what transpired in literally the championship race. And we're calling this manufactured by Masi because realistically, the race control manipulated the rules, changed rules mid-race, changed decisions mid-race, threw everybody into a complete tizzy, and on top of that, gave all the advantage to Red Bull and Max Verstappen on the very last lap of the race. Mind you, a race that he had not even led at any point. Lewis Hamilton dominated him for 57 laps until he got robbed on the very last lap here by Michael Masi, the race control, and even the stewards. We could put the stewards in here. We've talked a lot how the stewards all season long have been inconsistent, to say the least, and have been really unfair, especially to Lewis Hamilton, always forcing him into a position where he has to back out and take evasive action from maneuvers that Max Verstappen puts on that are completely illegal, dangerous, poor racecraft, dirty, however you want to put it. And that's been happening all season long. So we want to put the stewards in here too. But Michael Masi is the real criminal here, the criminal of F1, absolutely stealing this win from Sir Lewis Hamilton, who's now a knight, officially knighted today. Sir Lewis Hamilton, and stealing the win from him, his 8th world championship title. If you ask any real F1 fan, real motorsport fan, who they believe deserved that championship, who won that race, they're going to tell you it was Lewis Hamilton and that he got robbed and that race control basically cheated and changed the rules on the very last lap. I'll tell you that one of the main things, too, is that team principals being allowed to influence the race director and influence the race. I was telling producer Ben, that's like basically the equivalent of a coach in NFL. It fumbles, it goes to replay. The NFL coach calls up the replay center and says, nah, that wasn't a fumble, man. We deserve the ball back. And, matter of fact, we deserve it at the 1, 1st and 10. Guess what? That's exactly what happens. They get that call. That's exactly the same thing. That is clearly cheating. That is biased play. And it's unsporting, to say the least. But, man, there are so many people that are upset. And like I said, I had new fans actually sending me messages saying, what's going on here? Yeah. Like, why is this? Even new fans could see and recognize that it was unfair and that rules were being broken to basically help Max Verstappen and Red Bull. And so they're even questioning, and these are fans from the United States saying, why would I want to watch a sport that has a manufactured ending and a manufactured and manipulated championship? And that's what a lot of people are saying right now. So the integrity of the sport is at stake right now. And for anybody that didn't watch, what happened was a crash came out. Nicholas Latifi for Williams crashed with 5 laps left to go. Generally, and I'm talking 99.9% of the time, when that happens in Formula One, the race ends under safety car because there's not enough time to basically clear the wreck, clean up any debris, get the track racing surface clear, plus reshuffle the cars by rules to get all the unlapped cars cleared, and then have another lap for the safety car to still be able to come in after that's all settled. Generally, that takes more than 5 laps, and it was really only about 4.5 because Hamilton had already crossed the start line finish when this happened, and that obviously limited him as well. He couldn't go into the pits because he had already crossed the pits and had passed that when Latifi crashed. So there's really, in my opinion, only 4.5 laps left in this race. So it would end under safety car. numerous drivers, when the crash comes out, their engineers come on and tell them, safety car, safety car. They said the race is over, right? The race is over. And then the engineers coming back saying, we don't know, like, stand by. We're going to get information going on. And then they confused literally every team on the grid except for Red Bull, because Red Bull was the one calling the shots and making those calls to Michael Massey and influencing the race. It's absolutely disgusting. But after that came out, there's three real options that could be completely fair and that would follow the rules and that everybody would have been happy with, to be honest. The first one that would have provided an exciting ending, would have provided live action racing, would have been an automatic red flag the race. When you red flag the race, that means it stops. Everybody comes into the pits. You're allowed to change tires, that's a questionable rule that they got to look at going forward anyway. But you're allowed to change tires. At that point, Lewis Hamilton would have put on a brand new set of reds. Max Verstappen would have put on a brand new set of reds. Carlos Sainz would have put on a brand new set of reds. Pretty much everybody would have put on a brand new set of reds. And we would have had a 5-lap shootout, or like I said, a 4-lap shootout of just pure speed racing, fair competitive edge to the very end to see who your champion would be. That's the very number one option I think that everybody wanted to see. Michael Massey robbed us all of that. The second option that would have happened, that should have been by the rules, is, okay, you want to see live racing and live action? We've still got to clean up the accident and clean up the cars, but we're not going to unlap cars. Everybody will stay in position. Yep. And at that point, there would have been about 5 or 6 cars in between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, all lapped. We would have went back to racing, green flag racing, for about 4 laps, and Max Verstappen would have been getting blue flags, so those cars would have had to clear for him, but he still would have had to pass those 5 cars to get up to Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton was driving so superb that day, there's no chance Max Verstappen had an even chance to do that. Red Bull knew that, so they called for the 1 lap of racing at the very end. The third option that would have been legal and would have all been good is what we all said, that 99.9% happens at the time. The race ends under safety car. Nobody changes positions. Those 3 options would have been awesome, and it would have been a legit championship, a true champion. Nobody would have questioned what was going on. Instead, Michael Massey creates his own rules, changes everything, only unlaps 4 cars, the 4 cars or the 5 cars that were in between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, which now brings Max Verstappen directly behind Lewis Hamilton on a brand new set of reds because he pit, which is a clear unfair advantage. Who else should have been able to unlap? Sebastian Vettel should have got unlapped. Mick Schumacher, I believe, should have got unlapped, or not Mick Schumacher, but I believe there was somebody else in between there that would have got unlapped. So Daniel Ricciardo would have got himself unlapped. And so it would have taken longer to get all those cars unlapped. And it would have been about 7 or 8 cars to unlap themselves by rule and by regulation. Instead, Michael Massey changes all the rules, only unlaps 4 or 5 cars. And then on top of that, like I said, once you unlap the cars, you got to give still 1 more lap for the safety car to come in so all the teams can communicate, know where they're at, know that we're going to go back to racing. On the same lap that he unlaps the cars, he says, we're going back to racing. He tells everybody and communicates that literally in Sector 3, which is at the end of the track, right before we're about to start racing under the hotel. Mercedes is caught off guard. Literally every other team is caught off guard. They don't know we're going back racing except Max Verstappen. He knew it. He was on a brand new set of reds. He goes and takes advantage. And I'm not calling him that C word, that championship word. If anything, it would be a C word that people don't like to hear in life. That's what I'd rather call him and Red Bull, because they manipulated this championship. It's just all fake. It's all tainted. We'll talk about that more on the next subject. But just quickly before I pass it off to you, there's a lot of team radio coming out from all the other drivers, literally mid-race when this is happening, saying this is completely unfair or this is effed up, in the words of Daniel Ricciardo. He literally says, I'm so glad I wasn't part of that because this is so effed up. Literally, Lance Stroll goes, what the F just happened? I didn't even get to race. I didn't get to unlap myself and go to race for position. Carlos Sainz, who was in 3rd position, the last podium position, he didn't get cars unlapped in front of him. So he had to go by lapped cars to be able to fight for that podium. Realistically, he should have been up there fighting for the win with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. But the FIA and Michael Massey don't think that Ferrari or any other driver or anybody belongs to be racing for the win except for clearly Max Verstappen. So there's a lot of people with a lot of questions here. I really hope that Mercedes brings this to the highest court and the highest appeal and gets this overturned. That's the only way that you keep the integrity of the sport. Otherwise, you've got a clown champion, a fake champion, and a tainted title.
Yeah, it's chaos, just absolute chaos. And, I think the biggest thing that I see looking at this is, there was clearly so much at stake in this last race. How many times has this happened where the two top drivers at the top of their game, both equal amount of points, and wins were just one win separated the two. So if Hamilton had won, he would have had the equal amount of wins to Verstappen. So that everything was so locked up and tight that I think Masi just freaked out and didn't know what the hell to do. And kind of when you see players in sports where they just, when it comes to nut crunching time, they just kind of, have those deer in a headlight situation. I think that's what happened with Masi. There was so much at stake. He didn't know what to do. He didn't want to say, oh, the race has ended in these final 5 laps, because that's just anticlimactic. You know what I mean? Even though it would have been the right call. And like you said, that is 99% of the time what happens with the crash like that. It's the last 5 laps, and then the race is over. So, that's what should have happened. But he was thinking in the back of his mind, am I going to let this happen on this last race of the year with these two guys duking it out for the title, even though it should have gone to Hamilton? So I think he just freaked out in that situation. And we've talked about this all year long. It just seems like these penalties and anything that happens in F1 racing, the rule clarity just doesn't seem to be there. And there's no consistency, like you mentioned. And actually, I was reading an article earlier today. Back in 2020, Massey ruled on something else where he actually talked about finishing a race, with the penalty car, and not the penalty car, but with the last few laps after an accident, where whoever's ahead at the time is actually the winner, and that's what should have happened. So he contradicted himself. So it's like these rules are just it just seems like people are just throwing a dart at a dartboard and seeing what they should rule at the time. I mean, you mentioned not just Masi, but the stewards as well. It doesn't seem like there should just be one person figuring this out either. And I was listening to a podcast on The Ringer, and I think it was Kevin Clark was saying, this guy has too many jobs during a race. You need to split this up and have one particular official take care of this, and then have Masi, he does some other things as well. Split all this stuff up. This is a $1 billion, sports industry. Split this stuff up. So, it's almost like in the NFL when we look at the referees and everything's clunky and they're looking at replay. We've always said, have an eye in the sky. Have an additional official up top in a booth that's looking at the replay and just quickly going down to the ref. Okay, this is what happened on this play. Rule it this way. Instead, they have to have the head ref go over and take the time because they love the commercial part of it, but also because, the head refs need to, be so involved and make sure that they're the ones that are making the ruling. So Masi's got too much to do. But just the clarity of these rules and these rulings, it seems like this whole year has been like this. And I don't know if it's because it's, part of the pandemic or the rule changes that are happening in the off season. I don't know what's going on, but it just seems like there's just more chaos than ever before. Yeah,
more chaos than ever. And hey, we're talking about rules that have been set in stone in Formula One for almost 50 years. And like you said, this year they just flouted them and just threw them out the window. There is a rule book. When people are like, oh, Michael Massey, he's new to the job, he might not know what he's doing. There's a rule book. If he actually studied it, he'd know what he's doing. It's my equivalent today, man. We had some horrible referees in basketball who didn't actually know some of the actual rules.
Yeah.
So then how can you be an official in the game if you actually don't know the rules? It's the same thing. It's the equivalent of that. And just quickly before we pass this off, man, people are saying that Netflix influenced it. Literally Netflix influenced it. Hear me out. Because they wanted that last lap drama for Drive to Survive. So they got even on the horn being like, man, get it racing, get us anything for one lap so we can have more to talk about. in Drive to Survive. So people are saying boycott Netflix, boycott Drive to Survive. I'm seeing Rosamund Reese saying boycott the FIA, boycott F1 in the comments. A lot of people are saying that, and that's why I'm saying the integrity of the sport is literally at stake right now. So something's had to be done. I really hope that Mercedes pushes this to the highest courts and gets it overturned. And by the way, this happens all the time in Formula One too, where they look back after the race and say, nope, we got this wrong, or somebody gets penalized post-race and they change up the order. So people saying that you can't do that, yes, you can. Ask Carlos Sainz how he got his first podium in 2019. That was from basically changing the podium pre-race, post-race. Somebody got a penalty, and he got promoted from 4th to 3rd. So it happens all the time. They can clean this up if they really want to. Let's see if they will. Let's move on to topic number 2.